What's mindfulness?
So published on that as well. And I've been practicing many forms of mindfulness and ecology of practices since 1991. So I both have practitioners' knowledge and I also study it scientifically. I'm pretty sure I was the first person to academically talk about mindfulness at the University of Toronto within a classroom setting, like lecturing on it.
So this is a topic that a lot of people have recently become very interested in, think about. So from the early days, how do you think about what it is?
I've critiqued the sort of standard definitions, being, aware of the present moment without judgment, and because I think they're flawed. And if you want to get into the detail of why, we can. But this is how I want to explain it to you. And it also points to the fact of why you need an ecology of mindfulness practices. You shouldn't equate mindfulness with meditation. I think that's a primary mistake.
When you say ecology, what do you mean, by the way? So lots of many different variants?
No, so what I mean by an ecology is exactly what you have in an ecology. You have a dynamical system in which there are checks and balances on each other.
Got it.
Right? And I'll get to that with this about mindfulness. So I'll make that connection if you allow me. So we're always framing. We've been talking about that, right? And for those of you who are not on YouTube, this podcast, I wear glasses, and I'm now sort of putting my fingers and thumb around the frames of my glasses. So this is my frame, and my lenses, right? And that frame, the frame holds a lens, and I'm seeing through it in both senses, beyond and by means of it.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, my glasses are transparent to me. I want to use that as a strong analogy for my mental framing. Okay. Now, sometimes this is what you do in meditation, I would argue. You step back from looking through your frame and you look at it. I'm taking my glasses off right now and I'm looking at them. Why might I do that? To see if there's something in the lenses that is distorting,
right,
causing me to, right? Now, if I just did that, that could be helpful. But how do I know if I've actually corrected the change I made to my lenses?
Mm-hmm.
What do I need to do? I need to put my glasses on and see if I can now see more clearly and deeply than I could before. Meditation is this, stepping back and looking at. Contemplation is that looking through. And they're different kinds of practices. The fact that we treat them as synonyms is a deep mistake. The word contemplation has temple in it in Latin. Contemplatio means to look up to the sky. It's a translation of the Greek word theoria, which we get our word theory from. It's to look deeply into things. Meditation is more about having to do with reflecting upon, standing back and looking at. Mindfulness includes both. It includes your ability to break away from an inappropriate frame and the ability to make a new frame. That's what actually happens in insight. You have to both break an inappropriate frame and see, realize a new frame. This is why mindfulness enhances insight. Both ways, by the way. Meditative practices and also contemplative practices. So mindfulness is frame awareness that can be appropriated in order to improve your capacities for insight and self-regulation.
Now, I'm inexperienced with meditation, sort of the rigorous practice and the science of meditation. But, I've talked to people who seriously as a science study psychedelics, and they often talk about the really important thing is the sort of the integration back, so the contemplation step.
Yeah.
So it's not just the actual things you see on psychedelics or the actual journey of where your mind goes on psychedelics. It's also the integrating that into the new perspective that you take on life. Right.
Exactly.
You really nicely described. So meditation is in that metaphor is the psychedelic journey to a different mind state, and contemplation is the return back to reality, how you integrate that into a new world view, and mindfulness is the whole process. Those
right. So
together.
if you just did contemplation, you could suffer from inflation and projective fantasy. If you just do meditation, you can suffer from withdrawal, spiritual bypassing, avoiding reality. They need each other. You have to cycle between them. It's like what I talked about earlier when I talked about the opponent processing. within the autonomic nervous system, or the opponent processing at work and attention. And that's what I mean by an ecology of practices. You need both. Neither one is a panacea. You need them in this opponent processing, acting as checks and balance on each other.